A powerful celebrity, a struggling farmer, and a battle over a piece of land that becomes the symbol of justice for an entire community. When Snoop Dogg evicts a poor farmer to build his luxury retreat, he has no idea what's coming. This story will take you through betrayal, resilience, and the ultimate twist that no one saw coming. Stick around, because what starts as a story of greed ends in a shocking act of redemption that will leave you speechless. In the rolling hills of Central California, there was a small, lush farm, a piece of land that had been in the Harris family for generations. Despite its modest size, it was their lifeline. The farm was run by James Harris, a widowed farmer in his late 50s, who worked tirelessly to grow crops and support his family. The land wasn't just his livelihood, it was his identity, his heritage. But all of that was about to change. One warm summer morning, a convoy of black SUVs arrived at the edge of the farm, raising clouds of dust as they rolled down the dirt path. James squinted against the sun, his weathered hands gripping the handle of his shovel. From the lead SUV emerged none other than Snoop Dogg, or rather, a fictionalized version of the rapper. Dressed in an immaculate black suit with gold accents, sunglasses shielding his eyes, and a confident smirk, he stepped onto the dusty ground, looking entirely out of place. Behind him trailed his team of lawyers and advisors, all carrying briefcases. James wiped his hands on his jeans and approached cautiously. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with unease. Snoop smirked. "You're standing on my land now." James frowned, confused. "Your land? This has been my family's farm for over a century." "Not anymore," one of Snoop's lawyers interjected, handing James a thick stack of papers. "The property was sold last month at auction. You missed the payments on your loan. Mr. Dogg purchased it legally." James's heart sank as he realized what had happened. He had fallen behind on his payments during a bad season, when drought had killed most of his crops. He tried to renegotiate with the bank, but they had refused, and now his worst fears had come true. Snoop looked around at the small, weathered farmhouse and the fields of struggling crops. "This place is going to make a nice addition to my portfolio," he said casually. "We're turning it into a luxury retreat. You got 2 weeks to pack up and leave." James's face flushed with anger. "This land has been in my family for generations. My blood, sweat, and tears are in this soil. You can't just throw us out." But Snoop shrugged, clearly uninterested in the farmer's struggles. "Business is business, old man. Should have paid your bills." As Snoop and his team drove off, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake, James stood in the middle of his field, clutching the eviction notice. His daughter, Emily, came running from the farmhouse, her face pale with worry. "They can't do this, Dad," she said, tears streaming down her face. James placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, though his own heart was breaking. "We'll figure something out. We always do." But deep down, he wasn't sure how they could fight someone as powerful as Snoop Dogg. That night, James sat on the porch of his farmhouse, staring out at the land he had spent his entire life tending. The thought of losing it was unbearable. "This isn't over," he whispered to himself, gripping the eviction notice tightly in his hands. Little did James know, karma had its own plans for Snoop Dogg, and it was coming sooner than anyone could have imagined. The days after the eviction notice were some of the hardest James had ever faced. Each morning, he worked on the farm as if nothing had changed, refusing to give up on the land that had defined his life. But he knew he couldn't fight this battle alone. That evening, Emily sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, scrolling through local news sites. She turned to her father, her eyes filled with determination. "Dad, we can't just let this happen. We need to tell people. The community will help us," she said. James hesitated. He wasn't the type to ask for help, but the thought of losing everything forced him to swallow his pride. "All right," he said with a sigh. "Let's get the word out." Emily took to social media, sharing her family's story. She posted pictures of the farm, the eviction notice, and an emotional plea. My father has worked this land his entire life. Now, a rich celebrity is taking it away to build a resort. We need your help to save our home." The post went viral within days. Thousands of people shared it, and soon local reporters showed up at the Harris farm. James, though reluctant, gave an interview in which he explained the importance of the land and how much it meant to his family. "I don't want charity," he said. "I just want to keep what's mine." The story gained traction, and the local community began to rally around the Harris family. Neighbors, farmers, and even strangers showed up at the farm, offering their support. Some brought supplies, while others helped with the daily chores to ease James's burden. Meanwhile, back in his luxurious Los Angeles mansion, Snoop Dogg scrolled through his phone, sipping on an expensive drink. He frowned as he came across the headline, "Local farmer fights back against celebrity takeover." Beneath the article, hundreds of comments poured in, criticizing Snoop's actions. How can someone with so much money take from someone with so little? Snoop Dogg used to rap about the struggles of the working class. Guess he's forgotten his roots. "This is disgusting. Stand with the Harris family." Snoop chuckled to himself. "People always love to play the victim," he muttered. But his publicist, Denise, was less amused. "This is becoming a PR nightmare, Snoop," she said during a call. "You need to handle this before it gets worse." Snoop waved her off. "Relax. It'll blow over. Nobody's gonna stop me from building my retreat." A week later, the situation escalated when Emily organized a peaceful protest in front of the farm. Dozens of people showed up, holding signs that read, "Save our farms. Rich doesn't mean right. Hands off our land." News cameras captured the scene as protesters chanted and waved their signs. Emily spoke passionately to the crowd. "This isn't just about my family," she said. "It's about every hard-working person who's been pushed aside by people who think their money makes them untouchable. We won't let them take what's ours." The crowd erupted into cheers and the story gained national attention. Watching the news coverage that evening, Snoop felt a twinge of unease. He had dealt with bad press before, but this felt different. Still, he doubled down. He posted a video on social media, wearing a flashy outfit and speaking confidently to the camera. "Look, business is business," he said. "I bought that land fair and square. People need to stop crying about it and move on." The response was swift and brutal. His comments were flooded with criticism, and hashtags like hashtag Save the Harris Farm and hashtag Snoop Greed began trending. That night, as Snoop relaxed in his massive living room, Denise called again. "This isn't going away, Snoop," she warned. "They're calling you greedy and heartless. If you don't do something soon, this could get out of hand." Snoop leaned back, a smug grin on his face. "Let them talk. I'm untouchable." But outside his bubble of wealth and comfort, the movement to save the Harris farm was gaining more momentum than anyone could have predicted. As the days turned into weeks, the fight to save the Harris farm grew into a nationwide movement. Social media was flooded with posts supporting James and Emily, and hashtags like hashtag Save the Harris Farm and hashtag Farmers Over Fame were trending across multiple platforms. Even celebrities began speaking out, calling for Snoop Dogg to reconsider his actions. The Harris family farm became a symbol of the working-class struggle against corporate greed, and the pressure on Snoop Dogg started to mount. In his Los Angeles mansion, Snoop scrolled through his social media feed with a growing frown. His inbox was flooded with angry comments, and even some of his longtime fans were turning against him. "You're better than this, Snoop. What happened to standing with the people? You don't need another mansion. Let them keep their land. This isn't the Snoop Dogg we used to know." His publicist, Denise, stormed into the room with a stack of printed headlines. "This is officially a crisis," she said, slamming the papers onto the table. The top headline read, "Celebrity Snoop Dogg sparks uproar over farmer eviction." Snoop leaned back in his chair, smirking. "It's just noise, Denise. People love to complain." Denise wasn't having it. "This isn't just noise, Snoop. You're losing fans, endorsements, and credibility. If you don't handle this, it's going to cost you more than just bad press. Back at the farm, James and Emily were overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Volunteers helped them organize their growing movement, and donations poured in from people across the country. One evening, Emily received an email from a well-known environmental lawyer named Claire Weston. Claire had seen their story and wanted to help. "Your fight is inspiring," Claire said when she met with the family. "I reviewed the purchase documents, and there's something you need to know. The land sale might not be legal. If the auction violated California's small farm protection laws, we can fight this in court." James's eyes widened. "You really think we have a chance?" Claire smiled. "It's a long shot, but yes. If we can prove the sale violated the law, we can stop the eviction." With renewed hope, James and Emily agreed to let Claire take the case. As the legal battle began, Snoop started to feel the pressure. Protesters showed up outside his Los Angeles office, holding signs that read, "Give the land back," and "Respect farmers." The media was relentless, with news anchors questioning why a multimillionaire would take land from a struggling family. Even talk show hosts began poking fun at him. In one viral segment, a comedian joked, "Snoop Dogg evicting farmers? What's next, taking candy from a baby?" Despite his public bravado, Snoop was starting to crack. In private meetings, he grew frustrated with his team. "Why is this blowing up like this? It's just one farm," he snapped during a conference call. "Because it's not just about the farm," Denise replied sharply. "It's about what the farm represents. You're coming off as greedy and out of touch, and people aren't going to let it go." The courtroom showdown. The case finally went to court, drawing national attention. On one side was Claire Weston, representing the Harris family, armed with evidence suggesting the auction had been rushed and violated small farm protection laws. On the other side was Snoop Dogg's team of high-powered attorneys, determined to prove the sale was legal. The courtroom was packed with reporters, activists, and supporters of the Harris family. James sat quietly, his hands clasped together, while Emily glanced nervously at Claire. As the judge reviewed the evidence, the room held its breath. Claire presented a compelling argument, pointing out irregularities in the auction process and the bank's lack of communication with the Harris family. Snoop sat at his table, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. But beneath his calm exterior, doubt was starting to creep in. After several tense hours, the judge announced that the ruling would be delayed until further investigation into the auction process could be completed. Outside the courthouse, James addressed the crowd of reporters. "We're not giving up," he said firmly. "This fight isn't just for my family. It's for every small farmer who's been pushed aside by people who think money is more important than community." Snoop exited the courthouse through a back door, avoiding the crowd. As he climbed into his car, Denise turned to him. "This isn't just about winning or losing anymore, Snoop. If you don't find a way to make this right, you might lose everything." Snoop didn't respond, staring out the window as the car pulled away. The Harris family's case against Snoop Dogg was now the talk of the country. News outlets covered every detail, from the courtroom proceedings to the massive protests outside Snoop's Los Angeles office. Public support for James and Emily continued to grow, but they knew the fight wasn't over yet. Back in the courtroom, the investigation into the land sale had taken a surprising turn. Claire Weston, the Harris family's lawyer, discovered something unusual in the auction records. Late one night, Claire sat at her desk, poring over stacks of legal documents. Her sharp eyes caught an irregularity. The bank had bypassed a required notification process when they put the farm up for auction. By law, James should have been given a chance to reclaim his land before it was sold. The next morning, Claire called an emergency meeting with James and Emily. "This is it," Claire said, holding up the document. "The bank violated state laws when they sold your land. If we bring this to the judge, we can challenge the entire sale." James leaned forward, his voice filled with hope. "You mean we might actually get the farm back?" "It's possible," Claire replied. But it won't be easy. Snoop's team is going to fight this with everything they've got. While Claire prepared for the next court date, Emily and her supporters kept the pressure on Snoop. A viral video of Emily speaking at a rally gained millions of views. In the video, she said, "This isn't just about my family. It's about holding people accountable, no matter how much money they have. This land is more than dirt and crops. It's a legacy." The hashtag Give It Back Snoop began trending, and even more celebrities and activists joined the movement. Back at his mansion, Snoop Dogg was no longer as confident as he had been in the beginning. Sitting in his spacious living room, he scrolled through endless articles and social media posts attacking his character. Even his closest friends started to question his decision. "You're Snoop Dogg, man," one of his friends told him. "You don't need that land. Why are you doing this?" Snoop looked away, frustration written all over his face. It's not about the land anymore. It's about not backing down. But deep down, Snoop was starting to feel the cracks in his armor. When the court reconvened, Claire Weston presented the evidence, showing that the auction was illegal. She delivered a powerful argument, laying out exactly how the bank had failed to notify James about the sale. Snoop's legal team tried to argue that their client had purchased the land in good faith and that the legality of the auction wasn't his responsibility. The courtroom was tense as the judge reviewed the evidence. After a long silence, the judge finally spoke. "Based on the evidence presented, I am placing a temporary hold on the eviction order. Furthermore, I am ordering a full investigation into the bank's practices regarding this sale." The room erupted into murmurs. James and Emily exchanged hopeful glances, while Snoop sat stone-faced, his lawyers whispering urgently to him. That evening, Snoop sat alone in his massive home, looking out at the city lights. For the first time, he started to question if this fight was worth it. In his hand, he held a photo of himself from years ago, back when he was a struggling artist hustling to make ends meet. He thought about the people who had helped him along the way, people who had believed in him when he had nothing. "This ain't me," he muttered to himself. The next morning, Denise called him. "We need to talk," she said. "I've been hearing things about the bank that sold you the farm. If this goes public, it could destroy your reputation permanently. You need to get ahead of this, Snoop." Snoop sighed heavily, his mind racing. "All right. Set up a meeting with James and Emily. Let's figure this out." As the call ended, Snoop leaned back in his chair. He was finally starting to realize that this fight wasn't just about business. It was about doing the right thing. The tension surrounding the Harris farm had reached its peak. Between the court case, the protests, and the media frenzy, the entire nation was watching to see what would happen next. For James and Emily, the fight for their land had become more than just about survival. It was about justice. But Snoop Dogg, after weeks of backlash and reflection, was beginning to understand the gravity of his actions. He knew the time had come to face the Harris family directly and take responsibility. On a sunny afternoon, Snoop arrived at the Harris farm in a black SUV. This time, there was no entourage, no lawyers, just him. As he stepped out, he was greeted by the sight of Emily and James standing by the porch, their expressions a mix of caution and curiosity. James crossed his arms. "What brings you here?" he asked, his tone firm but not hostile. Snoop removed his sunglasses, his face showing genuine regret. "I came to talk. No lawyers, no contracts, just us." After a brief hesitation, James nodded and gestured for Snoop to sit on the porch. For the first time, Snoop spoke openly about his perspective. "Look, I started out with nothing," he began. "I know what it's like to hustle, to fight for what's yours. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that. I've been so focused on building my empire that I didn't stop to think about who I was hurting." He looked at James and Emily. "What I did to y'all, it wasn't right. I see that now." James raised an eyebrow. "So, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to make this right," Snoop replied. "I've already told my team to back off the court case. I'll drop the purchase, and the land is yours. Emily gasped softly, and James's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Snoop said. "I didn't come here to fight anymore. I came here to fix things." For a moment, no one spoke. Then James stood up and extended his hand. "It takes a lot to admit when you're wrong," he said. "I appreciate you coming here and doing the right thing." Snoop shook his hand firmly, and Emily stepped forward, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she said. "This means more than you'll ever know." The news spread quickly. Snoop Dogg had not only dropped the case, but also publicly apologized for his actions. At a press conference held outside the Harris farm, Snoop stood alongside James and Emily, addressing the media. "This isn't just about one farm," Snoop said. "It's about respect for the people who work hard every day to build something meaningful. I made a mistake, and I'm here to own it." The crowd erupted into applause, and the moment was broadcast nationwide. In the weeks that followed, Snoop went a step further. He donated a significant amount of money to support small farmers in California, creating a fund to help those at risk of losing their land. James and Emily, now free from the threat of eviction, focused on rebuilding their farm. With the support of their community, they expanded their operations and started hosting educational events to teach others about sustainable farming. One evening, as the sun set over the Harris farm, James sat on the porch, looking out over his land. Emily joined him, holding 2 glasses of iced tea. "You think he'll come back?" Emily asked with a smile. James chuckled. "Maybe. But if he does, it won't be for the wrong reasons this time." At that moment, a familiar black SUV pulled up. Snoop stepped out, this time dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt. "Hope y'all don't mind," he said, holding up a basket of fresh produce he'd bought from a nearby farm. "Figured I'd stop by and see how things are going." James smiled, standing to greet him. "Come on in. We've got plenty of tea." As the 3 of them sat together on the porch, the sound of laughter filled the air. The Harris farm was finally at peace, and Snoop Dogg had found something even more valuable than land: redemption. This incredible story shows us the power of standing up for what's right and the importance of owning our mistakes. What did you think of this journey, from conflict to redemption? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. Together, we can keep spreading the message of justice and respect. See you in the next video.